Well, I can say one thing. After watching the Texans and the Lions there, the 49ers are probably even more thankful that they have Brock Purdy on their football team. What a disaster class of giveaways and turnover worthy plays from both quarterbacks. And normally comebacks are impressive. And I know Detroit came back in this game. What was it? Probably it was 3 scores at one point, right? It was borderline 3 scores, at least 2 scores. At halftime, Dan Campbell spoke the turnover into existence. Multiple of those happened, obviously, in the second half. But normally you see like just a team storm back. The Lions didn't storm back. It was just like CJ Stroud throwing up all over himself in the second half. I mean, Jared Goff didn't stop throwing interceptions. He ended up with 5 of them. It was 23-7 at one point, and the Lions came back, and the quarterback play just left so much to be desired on both sides of things. You had to believe that the 49ers watched that game and said, this Detroit team is so beatable because Jared Goff isn't very good. Let me pull up the numbers. The final stats were just atrociously bad. I'm doing this off the cell phone today, so we're not going to put any graphics up on the screen. Shouldn't matter, though. I can read off some of them to you. Goff was 15 of 30 for 240 yards and 5 interceptions, a 59.7 rating. I want to see the EPA per play as well from Ben Baldwin's site. Keep in mind that Brock Purdy today, in what was also a comeback win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was at 0.5 EPA per snap. Like insane efficiency from Purdy. We go to the box score from today's game when we look at the strict efficiency metrics, the Sunday night game, and it was week 10. Where is this? There it is. Detroit, Houston. Both the quarterbacks were in the negatives. Negative 0.04 for Goff, negative 0.07 for CJ Stroud. So just to give you an idea of how inefficient that was. The fact that they were able to come back with that little efficiency just underscores how bad CJ Stroud was. That's like 5 bad games in a row for Stroud. And for the first time all year, the Lions, who had the #1 rushing attack and probably still do in football, really didn't have a rushing attack for most of the game. And I think it kind of fell apart like a house of cards for Jared Goff. But if you look at a formula to take on the Lions, the 49ers need to take a lot of pages out of Houston's book today defensively, because Houston was able to use a lot of complex run blitzes. I thought D'Amico Ryans had guys in the right place at the right time to take away Detroit's run game. Jared Goff really struggled because of it. And the only reason that Houston didn't win convincingly was because CJ Stroud was terrible. So combine a performance like what Houston's defense did today, if you're the 49ers, with decent quarterback play from Brock Purdy, and you can beat the Detroit Lions. I think that's the takeaway from the 49ers, because today Purdy was sensational. We've got a lot to talk about today. I want to talk about the shove heard around the world. I think a lot of NFL fans are talking about it. Deebo Samuel and Taybor Pepper, the 49ers long snapper. First time that we've really seen infighting, I think, in my entire 8 years covering the 49ers. First time I've seen a shove on the sideline. So I think that's why it's getting some attention. On top of that, Deebo Samuel is a star player in this league. And the 49ers special teams was so epically poor today that I really believe that a lot of people's frustration was embodied by Deebo Samuel when he went after the kicker and then the long snapper. Apparently, he tried to talk to Jake Moody, try to tell him to lock in, get his head in the game. We don't know exactly what Deebo Samuel said, but that was the word, I think, from Deebo Samuel. He was definitely talking to Jake Moody, and Taybor Pepper says that he was coming to Moody's defense. Jake Moody, after the game, I have his interview up. He said that Deebo Samuel doesn't need to apologize for anything. I mean, Moody's the guy that missed the 3 kicks. And it was the 3 missed kicks plus the muff punt, so all special teams miscues that were about to ruin the game for the 49ers offense and defense, which was playing really well. So I think Deebo Samuel channeled a lot of the same frustration that fans were feeling when he went and lashed out at the 49ers specialists. Do you ever want it to get physical? No, I don't think that's the goal of anybody. But what Deebo Samuel was trying to say, at least reading in between the lines too of his interview, because obviously they're not going to go out and they're not going to give the raw, unfiltered account of events that transpired in the moment. But I think Deebo was saying, I was trying to talk to Jake Moody. Taybor Pepper got involved when Deebo Samuel felt Taybor Pepper shouldn't have gotten involved. And then that's when the shove came. So it is what it is. Kyle Shanahan said after, brothers scuffle a little bit. If it hasn't been fixed yet, we'll fix it on the plane. We'll go back to loving each other tomorrow. So the 49ers are on the flight home now. Maybe they've landed already. Probably not. That takes quite a bit of time flying back west. That might be a 6-hour flight for San Francisco. So hopefully by this point, they have figured things out. Don't want that to turn into the Auburn basketball team plane. I know that one had to land right after they had a fight on board. But there was a shoving match on the sideline there. And Kyle Shanahan hopes that the flight will iron things out. Because I can tell you that Deebo Samuel and Taybor Pepper, at least when we talked to both of them in the locker room, they had not yet made amends. But that, I don't think you can read too far into that, because there's a lot of chaos after games. Tom Brady wants to interview people. Thought Brock Purdy was out on the field. I think he was doing a Brady interview after the game. Guys aren't back in the locker room yet. Then the media's in there. It's a big crowd. And then they're rushing off to get food and get on the buses that take them straight to the airport. So that was that. And I think overplaying this really misses the point of the frustration that the 49ers had to have been feeling. Remember, the special teams cost them 16 points in this game, between the muffed punt that turned into a touchdown for Tampa Bay and then the 3 missed field goals. I mean, they should have won this game by 3 possessions. Instead, they won it only by 3. And the time of the altercation on the sideline, the 49ers were down by 4. So, I mean, somebody's talking about Steve Young's meltdown. That was in 1994 when the 49ers were losing 40-8 to the Philadelphia Eagles. Steve Young wanted to go fight the coach, George Seifert, on the sideline. Jerry Rice a few weeks ago said that if the 49ers were performing as poorly, if his 49ers were performing as poorly as these 49ers were, I think it was probably in the game against the Kansas City Chiefs, he said that the guys would have been fighting on the sideline. And people were applauding that. They're saying, oh yeah, the 49ers in the 90s had it figured out. Well, now all of a sudden you do see a shove on the sideline coming out of frustration. It's a competitive, physical sport. People are condemning it. I just think it's part of the natural flow of frustration when it does happen, especially when it's as extremely available as it was in a game where the 49ers special teams gave up 16 points. I mean, this was, I haven't looked up the numbers yet, but especially if they would have lost, it would have been a historic meltdown. They would have lost, they won, right? They won 23-20. But the 49ers would have lost to a team that averaged only 3.7 yards per play. Tampa Bay averaged only 3.7 yards per play. That was one of the worst numbers in the NFL this year. Baker Mayfield averaged only 4 yards per pass. That was one of the worst numbers for any quarterback in the league this year. Tampa Bay barely managed 200 yards, 215 yards. The 49ers outgained them by 198 yards, 413 to 215. The 49ers were dangerously close to losing a game in which they nearly doubled up the opposing team in yardage. So you can see why there was frustration with their special teams unit, because the fault lied almost entirely with special teams today. Brock Purdy was awesome. MVP caliber football, sensational. Look at the receiving breakdown for the 49ers, the way that he spread out the football. Jennings, 7 catches, 93 yards. McCaffrey, 6 catches, 68 yards. Samuel, 5 catches, 62 yards. Pearsall, 4 catches, 73 yards. Kittle, 3 catches, 57 yards. I mean, all huge contributions. So the passing game definitely wasn't to blame for the 49ers only winning by 3. I don't think the defense was to blame when Baker Mayfield averaged only 4 yards per attempt and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers averaged only 3.7 yards per play. It was even worse than Baker Mayfield's passing production today. So when both the offense and the defense deliver at the level that the 49ers delivered at today, and the game was still close, yeah, there's going to be a lot of frustration with the special teams unit. I think it's as simple as that. Now, we should be more productive with things. We could talk about how does the 49ers special teams fix this? They have to use the 2021 model. Unquestionably, that is the historical precedent that's on the table for the 49ers special teams. In 2021, they were horrific in that phase of the game for 2/3 of the season. I mean, even the Cincinnati game in early December featured some bad special teams plays, but Cincinnati had more bad special teams plays than the 49ers. So by that point of the year, the 49ers started turning things around, or at least seeing the long end of the stick when it came to special teams in these football games. So I would say that for about 2/3 or 3/4 of the season in 2021, the 49ers had possibly the worst special teams unit in the league. But they turned that into special teams actually being a key part of epic wins in must-win games for them down the stretch. Week 18 of 2021, the game they came back against the Rams, special teams was huge. Absolutely massive. Mitch Wishnowsky suffered a concussion in that game, and Robbie Gould punted the 49ers way to being in position to win that game. Gould was absolutely massive. Kyle Juszczyk was the holder in that game because Mitch Wishnowsky was out, and he held very, very well, very effectively for Robbie Gould, who made some key field goals for San Francisco and a key extra point to tie that football game. So that was huge. And then in the playoffs, the 49ers actually outperformed the terrible Green Bay special teams unit to win a game in the snow at Lambeau Field. Jordan Willis blocked the punt. Talanoa Hufanga scooped it up and scored. So special teams, despite starting the year horrifically in 2021, ended up being, I wouldn't say a strong suit, but it ended up being a key contributor for the 49ers' magical run all the way to the NFC Championship game that year. And it wasn't the reason why they lost the NFC title game. So if you look at this year's 49ers team, their offense is better than it was in 2021. Their defense is better than it was in 2021. So all they have to do is continue improving offensively and defensively. And I think today offered a good blueprint for that because they performed really well here in Tampa Bay in both phases of the game. Match that performance from the offense and the defense up with special teams being average. All they have to do is be average. They were horrific today. All they have to do is average. And the Deebo Samuel shove of Taybor Pepper, at least from the outside, is going to ultimately be judged by how the 49ers special teams delivers from this point out. How their performance compares over the back half of the season to what happened before the shove. Fair or not, that's how people are going to look at this incident. If in 5 weeks the 49ers are on a win streak and the special teams is dominating, I guarantee you people are going to go back and say, well, they got their act together after Deebo Samuel got into it, Taybor Pepper and Jake Moody. But if the 49ers special teams continues eroding, continues being this horrific dead weight on the team, which it has been so far for most of this year and was today, well, then people are going to look back at that moment and say, well, Deebo Samuel was just being a jerk. That was the beginning of the end for the 49ers locker room. I guarantee you this is going to be one of those moments that people will treat differently based on what happens next, fairly or not. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the 49ers respond. I will say that the 49ers special teams has not been roundly bad in every single game this year. Dallas had the number one special teams unit in the entire league, and the 49ers kicked their ass on special teams. So they just need more consistency. They've shown that they can hold their own against the top special teams units in the league. But they also have shown that they can blow games and come close to blowing games. Now, this is one thing that I tweeted today, and this is a bigger picture look at things, because people are always looking at things from only one angle, and I think that it's really important to look at this particular situation from both angles, and I think both angles are applicable in this case. But the 49ers are in a situation where their special teams was putrid. That's point one. But point two is, if you can win on the road despite a special teams performance that putrid, you have a lot of damn good players on offense and on defense. To be able to overcome the 16 points that the 49ers lost today, Purdy had to be awesome. McCaffrey had to be awesome. George Kittle had to be awesome. Deebo Samuel had to do good things too. They had to have so many big plays offensively, and they actually had to have a good defensive performance to make up for how atrocious special teams was today. So that should be a point of optimism for the 49ers moving forward, if you're going to be 100% honest about this. Offensively and defensively, when you combine those two phases of the game, I think they're close to being on par with the best teams in the league. The statistical charts agree with me. I showed them in the previous show. I'm not going to flip around my laptop screen like I did last week. But defensively, again, you're holding the opponent to under 4 yards per play. That's good. Offensively, I don't think anybody needs to be convinced that Brock Purdy was sensational today. Maybe there is a select few on the internet that will criticize the quarterback no matter what. But those who criticized Brock Purdy's performance today with no basis at all, their minds probably should have changed when they saw what CJ Stroud and Jared Goff delivered on national television. That was absolutely embarrassing from both quarterbacks. Both Stroud and Goff were horrifically bad tonight. And the only reason that those two guys are going to get some sort of pass and Brock Purdy won't is because they were high draft picks and Brock Purdy wasn't. And that's what's wrong with the analysis of all of this, is that Brock Purdy should actually have more margin for error given the fact that he was pick number 262. And guys like Jared Goff and CJ Stroud should have less since they were high first-round draft picks. But unfortunately, it's inverse. Unfortunately, Purdy's the one that has to continue proving himself, and guys like Goff and Stroud will continue to get passes. But Goff threw 5 interceptions today, and then Stroud somehow managed to be worse down the stretch of this football game. So the 49ers have the QB. That's the lesson that we learned from this game today, that we've learned every single week. Purdy keeps on teaching us that lesson. The QB gets even better when a player like Christian McCaffrey steps into the fold, when somebody like George Kittle continues to play at his future Hall of Fame level. And the 49ers have the goods that it will take to get this done offensively. The offense hasn't even hit its full stride yet, and it's still, I mean, with field goals made today, that's a 30-point performance on the road. That's a blowout win for San Francisco. So offense is fine for the 49ers. Defense, I think, is going to be fine too. I think that they delivered more than enough today to inspire confidence for the back half of the season. It's the special teams that's got to figure it out. Now, you look at the games moving forward, and we just watched Detroit move to what, 8-1? Detroit's coming to Levi's Stadium on December 30th. You ask how the 49ers are going to beat the Lions. Well, you got to take a page out of the Texans' book today. The Texans played really good defense for the majority of that game. And the only reason that they ran out of gas defensively is because CJ Stroud gave the ball back to the Lions too many times. But what DeMeco Ryans had dialed up, how Azeez Al-Shire is playing. I mean, Chris Collinsworth was comparing Azeez Al-Shire to Fred Warner. He said this is the Fred Warner of the Houston defense. 49ers need to take some of that run defense action that worked so well for much of this game for Houston against the Detroit Lions, and they need to apply that to that game against Detroit on December 30th. Now, I know that's still a while away. 49ers have Seattle first. Then they go to Green Bay. Then they go to Buffalo. A lot of tests before then. The Bears, the Rams. We're going to get to see the Rams against the Miami Dolphins tomorrow. But I think the main point right now, when you look at any of these games, is that the Lions are vulnerable. And they're vulnerable because their quarterback isn't great. Their quarterback is very reliant on the run game, and if you can throw a wrench into the run game, Jared Goff, I mean, he goes into pumpkin form really, really quickly. We've seen this throughout his entire career. Somebody like CJ Stroud shouldn't be commanding all too much confidence for the Texans either, right? Because it's 5 straight bad games for him. Multiple giveaway plays today. Got lucky on one of the fumble plays. I mean, it was all bad. The 49ers have one of the top quarterbacks in the game, and he is a force of stability in Brock Purdy. And that is the number one ingredient to go on any type of run. So San Francisco's finally won these consecutive games, and they've got a quarterback who threw for 353 yards without a mistake really today. I mean, he was a little erratic with the accuracy early on, but he didn't throw anything close to an interception in this game. Didn't come close to fumbling the ball away, and we just saw a masterclass in how to turn the ball over from both the Texans and the Lions. Should make people a whole lot more bullish on what Brock Purdy has been able to do for San Francisco so far this year. Anyway, I'll answer a few questions here, and then we'll go off into the night. It's already late here on the East Coast. Wanted to give you guys one more show from Tampa before we wrap things up. How about Ricky Pearsall? That was special for the 49ers today. And, 4 catches, 73 yards for Pearsall, including the 46-yard touchdown. That was neat because Purdy and Pearsall had misfired on a connection just before that. Purdy put it a little bit behind Pearsall on the shoulder. And so they wanted to make sure they got it right, and they got it right. You know who that was who Pearsall dragged into the end zone? That was Antoine Winfield Jr. of Super Bowl fame from beating the Chiefs a couple years ago. So Ricky has gotten better and better every single week. And it makes sense because the rapport is developing with Brock Purdy to the point where they can take a play where they misfired, where they didn't quite have the connection that they needed to have, and they can fix it on the fly, which is what they did over the matter of just a few snaps in this game to get the 49ers off to that lead. A lead that, again, never would have been blown had they not screwed it up on special teams. Today, the fault lied primarily on the punt with Darrell Luter Jr. You can't get pushed into Jacob Cowing on that play. And no, they're not going to bench Jake Moody. Guys, there's context to everything. Jake Moody has been a good kicker for the 49ers, objectively. Made over 80% of his kicks as a rookie. Made a lot of 50-plus yarders. Was kicking well this season until he suffered the high ankle sprain. That was his first game back from injury, and it didn't go well. But then he made the game-winning kick. They're going to go out and give Moody at least one more game before they even start thinking about these suggestions that I see in the comments section. It's one game coming off a high ankle sprain. The amount of distortions and the inability to see things clearly and rationally is absolutely insane. And you guys have no excuse because the 49ers won this game. I would understand if they lost, but they won. So you could take a deep breath and you could say, hey, these guys played damn well in 2 phases of the game. Special teams was unacceptably bad. What was wrong? Oh, the guy had a high ankle sprain. It was his first game back. I think it's possible to take a deep breath, separate yourself from it, and realize that he's probably going to be better next week. Is the run defense still the biggest fix apart from special teams? Yeah, but I don't think the run defense was terrible today. I get it. But it was a hot day, and the special teams let the 49ers down. It was a complimentary failure in that regard, so they gave up a few big runs and a touchdown run there to Bucky Irving. Not a huge deal, something they can repair with better team football. Somebody said that the Chiefs are going to go undefeated. Well, let me give you some history here. The Chiefs are going for a three-peat. They're 9-0. Statistically, they haven't been great. You know what other team was going for a three-peat and was 9-0 and moved up to 10-0 before actually not capitalizing on its chance to three-peat, losing an NFC Championship game? The 1990 49ers. They won the Super Bowl in 1988. They won it again in 1989. They started 10-0 in 1990. They were not dominant in 1990, but they started 10-0. Finally, they lost, and then they got to the NFC Championship game that year, and they lost again. Roger Craig fumbled. The New York Giants beat the 49ers at Candlestick. So, no, a 9-0 start for the Kansas City Chiefs does not tell us that they're going to win the Super Bowl. we knew that the Chiefs were going to make the playoffs. We knew they're probably going to be the 1 seed because that's what they usually are able to do. Last year, they got there without being the 1 seed. But we figured that Kansas City was going to be a playoff team and was going to be a factor until the very end. So whatever they're doing right now in the regular season is nice, but it's not something that is going to translate into January and then February wins. They're going to have to earn those separately. Their pedigree is strong in those months. That's great. But we also have to look at this in terms of what's the probability of Kansas City continuing to win given how efficiently or inefficiently they're playing. And their offense has been sketchy. It hadn't been a top-tier offense this year. They've been really good on third down. You got to give them credit there. But the red zone play and just the overall efficiency has been a little bit shaky for Kansas City. Dare I say that Patrick Mahomes, for a lot of this 9-0 start, has been carried by his defense. But if it was anybody else but Patrick Mahomes wearing that uniform with the same statistics and the same plays and the same order of events, people would be saying that the defense is carrying the Kansas City Chiefs. So obviously they're a little short on the firepower offensively. That's why they picked up DeAndre Hopkins. We'll see what that turns into over the course of this season. But to crown the Chiefs right now, when you have historical precedent of a team going for a three-peat, the 49ers themselves being 10-0 and not getting the job done, I think that we can all agree that crowning the Chiefs right now would be a little premature. Anyway, 49ers tomorrow, we're going to be talking to Kyle Shanahan. We're going to find out if Renardo Green is going to be out for a bit. I know he exited today with a foot injury. We'll see if any other surprise injuries popped up. 49ers on the flight home from the Bay Area where Deebo Samuel and Taybor Pepper may be making amends. That's what Kyle Shanahan was at least joking about after this game. The Seattle Seahawks are coming in next. And I have to say the 49ers made good use of their bye week. Tampa Bay is the only opponent that the 49ers are scheduled to play this year that they're scheduled to play on short rest. 49ers had long rest, Tampa Bay had short rest, and it sure came in handy today. I think it really helped the 49ers outlast Tampa Bay. Next week, we go back to the big disadvantage that the 49ers face this year. They're facing several opponents on a net rest disadvantage. So the Seattle Seahawks had a bye week. They get to play the 49ers rested. The 49ers are coming off a cross-country road trip. They get to play the Seattle Seahawks a little bit more tired. Hot game, 85 degrees. It will drain you. It wasn't cold here in Florida, that was for sure. It wasn't football weather in Florida. So the 49ers are going to have to play the uphill rest battle against Seattle again next week. They're going to be favored, but it's going to be tough. They have to do it again against Buffalo. They already did it against the Kansas City Chiefs earlier this year. The 49ers had the biggest net rest disadvantage in football. The schedule makers were not kind to them. So they needed to win the one game where they had the rest advantage on their side. And I think that the 49ers definitely came through in that regard today. Offense and defense carried San Francisco, even though the special teams definitely did not. Although, ironically, the special teams are the one that delivered the nail in the coffin with the big kick at the end of the game. Would you guys just shut up? Like, Moody looks lazy. What are you even talking about? Moody missed 3 kicks. Kicker is a mental position. I mean, it got in his head today, but then he was able to kick the game winner. Why don't we just wait and see how Moody does once he has a little bit of time to knock off the rust following the injury? The overreactions and the overanalysis of Moody looks lazy, Moody this, Moody that, it's so tiresome. Because regardless of what you say, it's not going to change how actual football professionals think. The 49ers are not going to be reading the chat section and saying, oh, we're going to try this just because somebody in the YouTube chat says that. It's way too many comments these days on Twitter and YouTube think that they have some sort of impact and importance on how things will actually be decided. And it's a good thing they don't because they're entirely irrational. Anyway, 49ers got the win. 23-20, it was a big win. They're 5-4. They've got a lot of stuff on special teams to fix. They're going to try to fix it next week against the Seattle Seahawks. It's late here on the East Coast, so I am going to go rest. Everybody, thanks for watching. We will talk to you soon.